Hello everyone, welcome back to the Kirklees Guitar School podcast. In episode 4, we're going to talk about strumming patterns, acoustic guitar body shapes, what do they do, how do they sound different, some criminally underrated guitar players out there, and then we've got a Doors riff to finish. Stick around, it's going to be a good one. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Kirklees Guitar School podcast, episode 4. I'm joined today by George, my co-host.
Once again, I'm still here.
What sort of week have you had, George?
I've had a really good week. It's been a rock this week.
Okay, so did rock or roll? Has it been a rock or a roll?
We always start the podcast with whether our week's been a rock or a roll. Rock being good, roll being bad. And we're back to one-to-one lessons after half term. So we've just had here in the UK a week off. The schools have been away, but we've had band sessions here. Lots going on, which has been really good. So yeah, back to one-to-one sessions, back to bestowing knowledge on students. I've had a few new students join this week as well.
Okay.
Which has been good. And of course, on Sunday, we launched the first episode of the podcast.
We absolutely did. And I think it was, I think it's safe to say it was a huge success. Pretty much everybody we've seen this week has mentioned it, yeah, and how much they enjoyed it. So, and I think as well, you know, you guys will have seen 2 more episodes before this one airs, but
yes.
we're really pleased with how it's all going and intend on making many more. So keep posting in the Facebook group, everybody.
Absolutely, it helps us. It gives us fodder for the podcast, really.
Absolutely.
And your week been equally as good?
Yeah, it's been a rock. What's happened this week? I booked tickets to go see Robin Ford at Home for the Picture Drum, so I'm going to go get my jazz on and go watch somebody play and then come away feeling like I can't play.
It's a good gig when that happens.
Again, back to one-to-one lessons. This week we released a video for Another Brick in the Wall, which was really successful. Yeah, and that's like 10,000 views in a couple of days, which is really, really good for us, and it's brought lots of new people over to what we do over here in our little corner of the internet, so welcome.
Hello.
And I have been trying so hard not to buy a new Strat this week.
Oh.
I don't need one.
No, you have 2?
But I don't have a pink one.
It's not Hello Kitty one, is it?
No, it's not. No, it's an American standard, but with the painted headstock, you know, like my Jazzmaster. Yeah. But it's in shell pink, and I reckon I could put a PAF pickup in the back of it, and it'd be like a sort of Fender's take on a Bateo Sasato guitar.
It would appeal to your kids as well, in that sort of colour.
Yeah, but it's just in that price bracket where they're on the hangers in the living room that's just a little bit too far out of reach. So yeah, I've resisted because Andertons are having a flash fire sale at the minute, and I keep getting emails about it, and I keep going, oh, well, let's just have a look. And then before you know it, things find its way into your basket, and then you're having to explain to your wife why more boxes with Fender stamped on them are arriving at the door. But I've so far resisted. We'll see
tune in next week when James is playing a pink Strat, everyone.
We'll see. So what's on the agenda for this week, Josh?
So the set list this week, we've changed it up a little bit. We've had a few weeks of the same. We thought we'd mix it up a little bit. So we still have our technical focus, which this week's are strumming patterns. You probably noticed we're both on acoustic guitars, and it just lends themselves nicely to strumming patterns. A few people in the Facebook group were asking about rhythm, that sort of thing. So instead of us noodling for an hour, we can do some strumming patterns. From there, we're going neck deep once again, and we're looking at acoustic guitar profiles. So we have 2 different sorts of guitar here, and slightly out of shot, there are 2 other sorts of acoustic guitar. Now, we're not going down the whole mahogany sounds like this sort of thing, but this week's neck deep is looking at different sorts of acoustic guitars.
And how not necessarily, it's not like most guitarists aspire to own a Fender-style guitar, a Gibson-style guitar, a decent acoustic guitar. It's more kind of like we've got 4 different sized body shapes here to look at, and which one do you think would suit your needs a little bit more? Because a lot of people think of acoustic guitars and they think of these when actually
they're all different.
If you're under 6 foot, they're quite difficult to play a dreadnought-style guitar. So what are your options? That's what we want to look at today.
Fab. From there, we have a new section called Tone Talk. Now, for those of you in the Facebook group, I asked if anyone has any gear requirements, if you want to buy some stuff. So Tone Talk, we'll be talking about our recommendations for potential purchases. We've then got Pick Our Brains, which is similar to, no pun intended, similar to our audience questions, but this time we're talking about underrated guitarists. Now, neither of us have actually spoken about who we're talking about.
No.
There's nothing on our agenda for that, so it'll be a shock to both of us. And then, of course, we'll have our Riff of the Week once again.
Yeah, and we're gonna have a look at a Robbie Krieger from the Doors riff today. We're gonna have a look at Roadhouse Blues at the back end of the pod. So make sure
I've never actually learned that. So
have you not? Okay, right.
Nice to learn that.
Okay, very good. So strumming patterns then, George.
Yes.
So I'll bat this one over to you.
So strumming patterns. for those of you who have lessons with me, will have gone over these a million times, but strumming patterns refers to the style of how you're strumming on guitar. So usually, let's say you're at day dot, you've just learnt a few chords, you'll probably strum through a song with 4 what we call crotchets, which is 4 downstrokes.
4 beats to the bar.
4 beats to a bar.
So,
all counting 4s. We'd go for G, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that's great when you start because it gives you plenty of time to change between the chord, which is a big bugbear among a lot of players. But the pattern is when it changes. So you could go for I think any song you listen to, it might have a distinctive, like the Everly Brothers say. That's a pattern. That's one of a million.
Yeah. What have we covered? What have we covered recently? Something like Country Roads or something like that. That's more of a kind of. We've been doing Ring of Fire in the one-to-one lessons this week, and I think there'll be a video around similar time that this airs that'll go out, and that's what I call boom chicka boom chicka boom chicka strumming pattern. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
It lends itself to that genre.
That's it, yeah. So I think for those of you at the back, we did rattle through that fairly quickly. Strumming patterns come in. If you're a beginner guitar player, you started at day dot, you will learn to play a C, a G, a D chord. Oh, that's how we tend to do it at the school anyway. You start to play a C, G, and a D chord, and we get you doing that in a timely fashion. You then will practice a song, something like Brown Eyed Girls would be a great example. Fantastic. Some funny-looking fellow with a beard and a flat cap did a really good lesson on that you should check out if you want to learn it. We'd start then doing 1 stroke per bar. So we talk about there being 4 beats in a bar. Let's say our chord progression is G, C, G, D. We'd go G, 2, 3, 4, C, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4, D. And when you've got that with the record, think of that as like level 1. Once you can play that with the record, we then go to 4 strokes per bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we get that so that you're comfortable doing that with the record. Now, that can be distilled further, but I don't want to take all your day.
All it does doing that, it just brings the walls in a little bit closer. It gives you less time to change, doesn't it?
Correct. And that's level 2. And then level 3 would be applying a strumming pattern. So if you think level 1 is... Level 2 is... etc. Then level 3, we apply a strumming pattern. 2, 3, 4.
Now, to me, that's when it becomes music.
That sounds like proper guitar playing, doesn't it? You know? But I feel like guitarists, especially if they've been playing for sort of, I don't know, between sort of 3 and 6 months, they try and get to strumming patterns far too quickly, and then they go, oh, well, I don't like chords, I'm just going to do improvising, or I'm just going to do melody, when actually you've just not given it enough time for your feet. And it's, for right-hand guitar players, it's your left hand catching up.
Yeah, it is. I said to a lot of students, what we're working on this week, we're working on your left hand or your right hand, or regardless if you're a left-handed player, your picking hand or your chord hand. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of players, I try and get the strumming pattern in quite early, because then it's a bit more palatable.
And do you practice it as its own thing, or do you try and integrate it to a song?
We'll start off initially. We've got a list in our curriculum at the school with 5 strumming patterns on. Start off that on its own, and then say, well, why don't we add it to Sweet Child of Mine?
Right.
And it becomes like the universe just opens up a little bit.
Right.
Fireworks start going.
Yeah.
And you can gauge your progress. Then this week we're at 80% with that strumming pattern. Yeah, there's not much more to add other than giving some examples, really.
Yeah, but I'd just like to spend a minute just talking about the mechanics of it.
Okay,
really.
yeah,
I think that'd be a really good.
Beats underneath, yeah.
Well, it's just actually how do you strum effectively? Now, if you imagine when you're strumming, we're just going to take G chord for example today. Now, George, if you can you just strum 4 beats to the bar on that G chord? Now, if you look at George's elbow while he's strumming that. If you imagine his elbow is like the pendulum of a grandfather clock, his arm's moving like this. Mm-hmm. And you imagine the pendulum of a grandfather clock, or a metronome, you can think of it as a metronome. I'd like to say sort of 85% of the movement comes from your elbow, and that other 15% comes from your wrist ever so slightly. Okay,
I'd agree, yeah.
And it's loosey-goosey. Really, really sort of... You don't want, if you can hear you dragging the pick,
giving it too much.
You're giving it too much, but also I think one thing I've found over time through teaching a lot of people how to do this, they're holding the plectrum far too tight.
Yeah.
And that sends tension all the way up through your forearm, through your elbow, up through your bicep and into your shoulder, and you...
It's why I say you want a little bit of give when you're holding your pick. It wants to move around a little.
But what if I drop it, George?
Well, if it goes in your sound hole, then give up.
I've got a secret invention for that, but I can't tell anybody what it is though because it's my Dragon's Den idea. Now, yeah, plectrums they're a lot harder to drop than you think actually.
Yeah, you really have to. It happens when you least expect it.
Yeah,
of course.
But also you just pick it up and carry on, you know, and it stops that. Me and George at one point were taught by the same guitar teacher a long time ago, and he used to call it the cheese grater sound. Did you do that in your lessons?
I remember that now. Wow, that's a blast from the past.
Yeah. You don't want that sound. It wants to be. You want to think you're stroking the strings, not raking across them.
And we both now picks. This could be a different thing as well, but I don't know what sort of style pick you. I opt for a 0.73 of a millimeter plectrum. Because there used to be a fantastic music shop near us called Dawson's, which when they closed down, now I was a student, so I didn't have the cash, but £1,000 Strat was now £500, for example.
Yeah, Che was talking about this in the Facebook group actually. How we tend to go into local music shops. Now we did have a few. We're in West Yorkshire, and there's one very good music shop locally to us that has a. That's great for acoustic guitars and like banjos and mandolins and things like that. Eagle Music down at Armitage Bridge are very good. Not so much for electric guitars and the kind of stuff that we're really into, so we have to go a bit further afield. And we tend to go to those big chain kind of shops. And I've just the past kind of 3 or 4 times I've been to those shops, I've had a terrible shopping experience, and I'd rather just order it online from somebody.
It's convenient, isn't it?
Yeah, somebody like Guitar is really consistent. I've never had a bad product from them. You know, it's... So yeah, sorry, Woods. No, Woods at the top of it. Well, it was Woods. It was then Dolphin, and then it was Dawson's. Yeah, so he's been in trouble with this music shop for a long time. I've known it change hands 3 times, and it did do a few more times than that before that.
But I went in to pay my respects, and they had a bag of 200 of these picks, and I thought, I'm not really used to them, but they were £2 for 200 picks, and I've still got the tin full of them.
If you're still using them,
yeah, absolutely.
How long
is
ago did they ship?
8 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, about that. So I'm getting my money's worth.
And this will sort of, when we talk about body shapes, this will kind of body shapes for guitars. Yeah. That's a different podcast. Some people are a little bit more scientific than others. My approach to plectrums is just whatever's. I've got an old coffee jar full of picks of all different sizes and shapes. People leave picks at the school all the time. And I've got a couple that are my preference, but I just kind of pick one from the jar and kind of make it work. And I feel like it makes me a lot more versatile as a guitarist as well.
Yeah, I suppose so. I've stuck to this. I tried, when I was doing one of the band sessions last week, I tried to use just a random pick that came with some strings. Hated it. But I know you have a student that does this because I've covered for him. One of my students does this. He's got some electrical tape around the top of the pick because they feel it's and this time of year it's quite cold, your fingers aren't, it's more inclined to slip.
Yeah.
But they have it so the pick doesn't fall out of the hand.
Yeah, I know somebody in the the daytime ukulele club that we do uses a blob of blue tack as well.
Yeah.
I wouldn't personally recommend it, but anyway. So yeah, we're getting into the weeds a little bit here. So can you show me a strumming pattern, George?
Yes, so I've prepared a strumming pattern for us and I'm going to show you how you can use it, why you might use it. So this strumming pattern, we call it down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Now, in behind the scenes, that is an entire bar of quavers. Okay? Now, quaver is half a beat. Okay. And now we're having
so your 4 beats to the bar, you've got 8 strokes total. Okay.
We can also refer to this as double time because we've got that down, up, down, up, down, up. We've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and whereas what we looked at the beginning, your level 1 will be 1, your level 2, will be 1, 2, 3. So we're cramming an extra one in there. So I'm going to take G to A. Now, in terms of melody, this is working up a tone. We're ascending. We're going upwards. Now, this is great for what we call build-ups in songs. When things are getting a little bit more exciting, maybe a pre-chorus, something like that, or a bridge. And it sounds like this. Now, that's actually the build-up using Seven Nation Army.
All right,
everyone knows G to A.
Now, you can do that all as downstrokes, but on acoustic guitar, it sounds better having that motion. I feel like if you spend all your time doing downstrokes, your playing starts to sound quite monotone.
It does, and it's more economical. I always preach that if you're going down, you have to come back up to go down again. So why not pick on your way up again?
Yeah, you're on your way past, so you might as well
Now, there are
capture it.
applications, sometimes if you look at Metallica, for example, they'll have lots of down picks. But on
They're
acoustic
famous
guitar,
for doing
yeah,
down
het
picks,
fielders,
aren't they? Yeah.
But yeah, this pattern, once again, we've got down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Now, that seems like it goes on forever, but it goes by quickly. It's the duration of 1, 2, 3, 4. You can use it on any chord. Now, I wouldn't fill a whole song with it. Let's say you're doing Brown Eyed Girl. I wouldn't sit on that and do that the whole way through.
Well, there is a sort of, you can put some accents into that to kind of spice it up a little bit. Something like, I'm struggling off the top of my head. Something like Have You Ever Seen the Rain? You can do so that'd be da 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 me long ago. Now, if I just did that for 2 minutes, it'd get pretty. But if every once in a while I just strum one of those downstrokes a little bit harder.
It's percussive then. Yeah.
Think of a drummer going. And all I'm doing there is I'm just strumming it that little bit harder.
Yeah.
I did a video on accents. If you go to the YouTube channel where I break it down with the down, down, up, up, down strumming pattern, and people like Noel Gallagher use those kind of patterns and those techniques ad nauseum to really. That's how you get a lot of texture in your acoustic guitar playing. So, okay, cool.
So that's what I'd advise.
Yeah. Okay, right. I think we should go neck deep.
Fantastic.
Next.
This is
So
why we're here with these guitars.
yeah. So what does the body do for an acoustic guitar, Joe?
It's the visuals, obviously, and it's the sound, because obviously, well, we're both plugged in, which doesn't help our argument right now, but ordinarily you're sat at home, you're not plugged in. It gives the guitar there's more space for the strings to resonate. That's one main benefit. There are many which I'm sure you'll go into as well. So you've got different styles, gives the strings more space to resonate. There's different comfort levels, as you said earlier, if you're 6 foot tall and you're playing a dreadnought. I mean, my first acoustic guitar was that size, and I was 8, and I really struggled. Struggled. So what have you got down there?
So this is a Gibson J45 Studio. I bought this in the lockdowns because I was doing a lot of teaching online, and I needed a good acoustic guitar that I could plug in so that the student on the other end could hear it. Well, that was my justification, but I played a Yamaha APX 500 for years
Forever.
before that.
God was still about.
Yeah, so that's currently my living room guitar at the minute. So I just wanted something a little bit nicer, but I wanted something with a big body as well. Now, dreadnought guitars, kind of if you asked somebody to draw a picture of an acoustic guitar, they'd draw that shape. Just as if you ask somebody to draw an electric guitar, they'd draw a Stratocaster.
I'd agree,
it's just the immediate thought that somebody thinks of. Now, a dreadnought's a big-bodied guitar. Now, the necks on all 4 of these guitars are more or less the same size within a certain tolerance. The body, acoustic guitars work by the air moving around inside the body of the guitar. Now, in theory, the bigger the body, the bigger the sound it can produce. Okay. Now, when I think of the J45 originally, a lot of these designs were originally done by a company called Martin. So the D28, the D18 is sort of, as far as I understand it, I could be wrong. In fact, I was having a conversation with a gentleman that comes to see us called Barry, who's in the Facebook group. Hey, Barry. And he was saying that Martin never patented those and trademarked those body shapes, so that's why everybody else kind of followed suit. Now, it's a very country and western kind of styled thing, is dreadnought guitars. You think of like Glenn Campbell and Johnny Cash and all that kind of stuff.
It's what I describe to people as the campfire guitar.
Yeah, but also if you strum it with some big open cowboy chords.
Yeah,
it's lovely. But what I like about guitars of a certain quality, so this is a J45, and it's what they call the walnut. Now, I don't know if you can see the back of that. It's got a lovely piece of walnut on the back of it. Now,
so that's one thing to put in. These guitars have different materials front and back and sides, don't they, as we can see with yours?
They do, and that's how they're often sold as like exotic woods. But just before we go into that, these guitars are synonymous with being big, heavy strummers and really good at that stuff, but you can be delicate with them as well. Like if I put the cap on the 7th fret, you know, you can play delicate ornate stuff as well. You know, or somewhere in the middle, something like Norwegian Wood.
I was playing that yesterday, actually, yeah.
Notice how the melody sticks out among all the chords while you're strumming it. And you can still sort of do the... It can still be country and western if it wants to be. That's more like the double O, which we'll talk about in a second. But big-bodied guitar, big sound, very, very versatile, but not very comfortable to play if you're vertically challenged.
Yeah.
What are you playing, George?
So this, some of you have probably seen, has a bit more going on at the headstock. So this is a 12-string guitar. Now, James featured this on the podcast, on the Facebook group and the YouTube channel before Christmas. I bought this in the summer because I've been umming and ahhing about buying a 12-string for years. And to me, a 12-string's like a looper pedal. You don't need it every day, but it's nice to have one. And I sort of scratched that itch. So this one in particular is a Harley Benton custom. Now, those of you who shop at Thomann will know they sort of wave the flag for Harley Benton. I bought this one because it was the same price as an equivalent Fender. I have a Fender guitar just out of shot here, which we'll look at in a moment. But this is a 12-string custom line, so I've got nice things like I'm looking at a spec sheet because there's a lot going on with these guitars. It's a jumbo. That's the crucial thing with this one now, which is, if you look at them both together, this is slightly larger than the Dreadnought, which is already large.
It's got a slightly larger bottom, but it's got more hip.
It has, yeah.
That's the way I sort of think about it. Now, personally, these two are very similar. And got
regardless
very
if this is 12 string or not, the jumbo, yeah.
Like the shape of the guitars are very similar. I much prefer personally the Dreadnought look over the jumbo, but they're both supposed to scratch a similar itch. But the fact that yours is a 12-string, it's a bit. I see why you went for that over a Dreadnought 12-string, because a lot of you think of people who are famous for playing a 12-string. David Bowie was a jumbo, not a Dreadnought.
The Eagles.
Eagles. Sambora played what they're called, Ovation with the plastic back. So yeah. So how's that tuned then? And when did you start tuning it? 3 hours ago?
Yeah.
4 hours ago?
Problem with a 12-string guitar is you've got twice the strings. So tuning up, you've got a high octave E and then a normal E. So I've still got the same strings that James has on his, and we all have on our guitars, but every other string has a higher octave. Now, your B and E are the same, but that gives it that really nice... Everyone just sat up in their living room as I played that.
Yeah.
Now, that is very sharp and bright, like we're looking at the other week on the podcast. But the same with James is, I can play some... Because of the benefit of the jumbo, this... mahogany neck, mahogany back. It's all mahogany, this one. You can see that even though we've got the 3-tone burst at the front, at the back, it's just plain old mahogany with the 3-ply bindings. But I can still play some big open chords. But then I jump into the 60s. And as every guitar player who's ever practiced on a 12-string will adhere to, you have to give a bit of Pink Floyd a go. And it just sounds magical.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether this is a jumbo or not, a 12-string sounds great. But the jumbo size of this, I wouldn't want to gig this guitar because it's just big. It's an inconvenience. As we've been setting up today, we've both been very carefully manoeuvring around.
Not batting each other's guitars on us.
Now, this guitar in particular was relatively inexpensive compared to a J45. Now, we've both played this guitar and been pleasantly surprised by it. I've only had it 6 months or so I'm still getting to know it.
But the way that I sort of think about it is a tool like a 12-string comes out of the cupboard every once in a while and does something really specific, whereas anybody that comes to see me for one-to-one lessons here at the school will have seen this guitar. I play it all the time. So if you think cost per use, it's probably about the same.
Well, speaking of cost per use, I'd like to jump to my other guitar.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
So if you're watching, this will be rather awkward.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to do the same. We'll get it all out of the way in one hit. So George is swapping to. Would you call yours a parlor-sized guitar?
I would, yeah.
Maybe. And then Jeff, one of the students at the school, and he's in the Facebook group, has kindly lent us this 00 style guitar. So thank you very much, Jeff. Much appreciated. So what are you playing?
So this is they don't make them quite like this anymore. They don't make them like they used to,
Oh,
you know.
lad. When I were a lad.
This is a compact parlor-style guitar. Now, this in particular is a Fender California series Malibu. Now, they still make the Malibus, but this California series was actually developed along with Dick Dale from... Now, his was back to front, upside down. Because of course
As everything it does,
his
yeah.
was.
Yeah.
But this is in Olympic white. This is actually an 11-year-old guitar now. But when we're talking about cost per use, I did about between 12 and 20 gigs on this guitar last year. Changed the strings every other gig, and I've gigged it forever.
Are you using 12s on that, or are you using 11s?
Yes, I am.
Are you? Right,
Now,
okay.
for one gig, I did... Now, one thing I like about this, the reason I went for a parlour style, so that's slightly smaller, Ed Sheeran plays sort of smaller guitars as well. I've got a full-scale neck with a Strat-style headstock, but it fits comfortably. Now, it does feel like a bit of a toy. It feels like I'm playing a ukulele compared to the jumbo back-to-back. But yeah, I do play 12s because it gives a really nice... Now, I'm not plugged in for this, but it's still quite a deep sound for a little guitar. But then I can still get the higher tones.
And maybe that's a topic for another podcast. We were talking... The guys in the lead guitar class, the Wednesday night lead guitar class, we were talking about my Jazzmaster, and I'm going to change the bridge on my Jazzmaster, but I wasn't sure whether to take the strings because that's got 11-gauge strings on it, and whether I was thinking about going down to 10s. And thicker strings, I mean, again, it's like Tonewood. Like, we're skirting around this rabbit hole where people on Reddit are going to get cross with us, George. That's
already.
it. Yeah, come at me, bro. But having thicker strings on that guitar makes it a little bit more difficult to play, but you are getting that slightly bigger sound.
See, I gig with this in a lot of gym bars and pubs or outdoor venues, and I like that deep. When this is plugged in, it does have a really nice deep sound, and yeah, I have used 11s on it, and it makes, because sometimes I'll be playing some blues, and that, I can feel it already. Now, if you play a song for like Hotel California, for example, it's 6 minutes of bar chords. I can feel the burn starting my wrist.
It happens to us all, folks. It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, so now yours is pretty much as small as this one, but it's different to a parlour.
Yeah, so this is called a 00 style guitar. There's various iterations of it. It was originally developed by Martin, and kind of it's got its roots in that sort of acoustic blues, bluegrass kind of American, Americana kind of styles. And it's a lot of people that play the kind of, again, these two aren't plugged in, so not all of them plug in, but it's that sort of...
See, even in the room, that's very different.
And it's got that sort.
Yeah.
But also, a lot of these guitars were used for... It's not all just sort of pickup trucks and banjo rolls.
Yeah.
It's not all just that. It's a lot of the finger picking that people aspire to.
Yeah, I should have
learn
mentioned that,
was kind of on that sort of, Travis picking, that kind of stuff.
I think what we're trying to say with these two, they're a bit more chuckable. If you're driving through a town centre, you want to be in a Mini rather than a Rolls Royce, for example.
Okay.
And that's what I feel with this. I can play, because this has got a C-profile neck, lovely laminated as well, it's gorgeous. But it feels like a Strat, this neck. I mean, the headstock it's got the vintage tunes.
That's a big selling point for a lot of acoustic guitars.
But they're comfortable and easy to play.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if you imagine it's a common complaint that, acoustic guitars are more difficult to play than electric guitars. But there are now these guitars on the market, which are... They're essentially, that's a Strat neck bolted onto an acoustic guitar, which, again, Jeff mentioned in the Facebook group about the Acoustasonic guitars.
Yes.
Now, you were on and one of the other patrons at the school as well was toying with the idea. I've played quite a few of those. What are your thoughts on those? Because they're a bit odd, aren't they?
I've never played one. I've only ever looked at them online and gone, ooh. They're different. They sort of blew the internet up when they came out, but now they were based. If you've never seen one, it's like imagine a Telecaster with a sound hole in it, and it's a bit thicker.
And it looks like a bit of posh Art Deco furniture.
It does, yeah. But now they've got Jazzmaster versions. They've just brought out a whole new. There's Mustang ones as well. This is actually traces its roots back to a Mustang.
Mustang ones?
Yeah, they've just brought
I've not
out
seen
a new.
those.
Yeah,
Right, okay. So I've played. So there's. And this is like, regardless of whether you're bothered about the Acoustasonics, Fender do this like clockwork. They will release new models and new products in cycles. So probably 3 or 4 years ago, they released the original Acoustasonic, which was best part of £2,000.
Yeah.
Very expensive, very nothing like it on the market. And guitar companies' jobs are to sell you guitars, and they were going to change. It was going to change the world, and people like people like Daniel Donato and all these country guys, and they got a bit of traction. And I played one of the sort of first run of those, and they were okay. And then I'm not sure if they were made in Japan or they were Mexican, but a second series came out that instead of being £2,000 were more like £1,000. And I played one of those, and to be honest, I didn't see the difference. But a few of the electronics and the sort of bells and whistles are removed for cost saving, but essentially the same guitar. And now at NAMM in January, they've released a £500 version. Is that right?
Yeah, they've just brought out a whole, basically Fender in a bit of a hole, and they need to shift stuff. So they've just brought out a new standard series across everything,
which is a podcast in itself. We won't get into that. There's people
but
talking
essentially,
about
if you can see this, a lot of people want that script on their headstock.
Yeah.
And like I was using a Squire last week. There's nothing. Well, some of the new Squires are questionable, but nothing wrong with that era of Squire. It's just brand snobbery.
Well, I think the classic Vibe series.
Wonderful set of guitars.
Gareth's just bought one, hasn't he? After much peer pressure from the group.
I did nudge him a little bit. We all did.
But I think if I was to hypothetically, if all my equipment was to evaporate and I needed to go do a gig on a shoestring, I'd buy a classic Vibe Telly or Strat and a little Fender combo, a little Fender Blues Junior or something, and I would be fine.
Well, speaking of Blues Juniors, we're going to go to our tone talk.
Yes.
Because we have a few questions from the Facebook group, so thanks to those who contributed.
Okay, so this is from David. How are we going to say that? Is it Bezer?
David B.
David B.
Thank you, David.
Apologies, David. Do you have any recommendations for a suitable guitar, electric or acoustic, for an 8-year-old? One of those.
Now, right, okay. So the big thing I say to a lot of my students who are children and parents, they're not going to be 8 forever. Now, some players, like let's say 8, we'll use this idea of an 8-year-old. If you buy them something really small that's effectively an oversized ukulele, something quite small, they'll get down the line, but then when they hit 11 or 12 in a couple of years, it will be small, and chances are you've spent not a lot of money on that guitar because, to be fair, you don't know if they're going to stick with it. You don't want to spend £200 on a new guitar, excuse me, if they're going to pack it in 6 months' time. So I would recommend for an 8-year-old something like a Parlor or a Double O. Definitely not a Jumbo or a Dreadnought like we've talked about today. But if you're looking at electric, now that's acoustic covered because you've got the versatility, it's comfortable, and it'll sound nice. Something like a Fender or a Squire, like we said, or Harley Benton. You're not going to break the bank, but you're also going to get a quality product because there's nothing worse when you're teaching someone. You know the guitar's in tune, but the note just sounds terrible. And they're going to struggle to play it if it's not very good quality. Regarding electric guitars, again, I mean, Facebook Marketplace, eBay could be your friend, but it's nice to have a new guitar.
Squire, Yamaha,
something
like that. Now, there's a lot. This is where me and you might disagree on this.
I think
a
it is.
bit.
I'm treading carefully.
So I'm very much of the, children are fickle. What I would do if one of my children wanted to learn how to play, bearing in mind the dad's a guitar teacher, I would buy them a 50 or 60 quid little 3/4 classical guitar to get going. Now, it's not the fact that it's a cheap guitar, but it's the fact that I know that I can put a decent set of strings on that guitar, maybe fell the note down a little bit, and I can sort of just kind of tweak it a little bit to make it a really nice playing, cool little guitar. And then when they play it for 3 weeks and decide that they don't want to carry on, you're not too much in the hole.
Yeah.
But I have a deal. I'd strike up a deal with said small person.
Negotiate with an 8-year-old.
Yeah. It can be done.
Can be.
That if they stick with it and they do what they want, we'll go guitar shopping and we'll go pick what they want within reason. And I feel like that's just my sort of parenting style
That's
anyway.
what
It's kind of
happened to
like,
me.
just try a little bit, and we'll invest in what you want to do if you really want to do it, but you kind of just have to kind of be sensible to start with. And I would, again, so I'd probably start with a fairly cheap kind of something like Gear for Music if you're in the UK, something from Toman if you're Harley Benton.
I'd lean more towards Toman, not because I work for them in some kind of capacity, but Gear for Music, a lot of the entry-level guitars, I see them every day, every week. They're just not very good.
But they're also not
Expensive.
They're not expensive, but also they're not set up. And realistically, are those guitars ever going to be played above the 15th fret?
Well, no. Are they going to be played at all at home? Probably
Yeah,
not.
and that's the that's the thing. And what I'd do is I'd rather spend that money on lessons rather than equipment. And then we sort of get 9, 12 months, maybe the birthday or Christmas rolls around, and then you get the brand new Squier, Yamaha. I'm trying to think of other brands in that category.
Yeah, Harley Benton.
Yeah,
as well,
sort of the
that
upper range Harley Benton stuff, maybe. You're looking at spending maybe a couple of £100 plus. But they can already play a little bit, but also they've kind of had enough time to sort of mingle with other guitar players and they figure out what they like and what they don't like. If you take a child to the local chain guitar shop round us, it's called PMT in Leeds, you take them to there and go, oh, so do you want a Fender or a Gibson style guitar? They don't know what they're talking about.
It's what you could, you look at the guitars and go, we can afford these ones, we can't afford those ones.
Yeah,
like if these were in a guitar store, you'd have a line of Harley Benton, say, and then a line of Gibsons, and you stop when you get to Gibson, because that's big boy toys up there, because then instead of being 3 figures, it's 4 figures. Mm-hmm. And obviously, I mean, unless they're a virtuoso, you're not going to give an 8-year-old, I certainly didn't, you're not going to get a Gibson.
So yeah, that's what I'd say. Sort of, if you're comfortable spending the money, something branded. But also, I think it's really important what the student wants to play. If the student wants to play electric, buy them an electric guitar. You don't have to start on acoustic guitar.
They're not going to suffer playing acoustic or electric. They'll be absolutely fine on either. So I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Well, and it's dead simple. Thank you, Ryan. Best practice amp. Simple question. Will have the longest answer. I think.
Correct. So, might divide opinion here.
Okay.
The Boss Katana series of amplifiers is excellent.
Which we both have one here.
I have recommended. I bet a dozen people have bought those amplifiers on my recommendation, and they are excellent. But I feel like if I was to recommend those amplifiers again, I would maybe recommend those as a second amplifier, not a first.
Interesting.
Because they've got so many features, and a lot of the students that still have those amplifiers and still use them and are still very, very happy with what they've got don't they still don't know what the effects section does. Because they're too busy learning how to play the guitar, not learning how to use an amplifier. So maybe divide opinion there, but I'd say if you are a competent guitarist and you are just looking to play and jam and enjoy and have fun and want to be able to get most tones that you hear on records and you're comfortable using all that stuff, the Boss Katanas are an excellent option. Or even if space is tight, it's probably a 15-year-old Roland Microcube, which was the predecessor.
They were ace.
And we still have one upstairs that we use. But if I was just to have a little amp set on my desk, that's probably what it'd be. Now, what would the amp that comes before the Katana, what would I recommend? I'd recommend something with 2 channels, clean and dirty, and reverb. And that's it.
It's a must.
That's all you need, because you want to learn how to use those fundamental things first. Yeah. So you might not want to throw that much money around, but something like a Marshall DSL-1 or DSL-5, something like that, if you want a valve one, or even something like, to be honest, the Fender, is it the Champion they call them?
Frontmans and Champions.
Frontmans and Champions. The ones with reverb are okay. Like, it's a practice amplifier. It doesn't have to be like my Fender Princeton or my 50-watt Super Lead. But I would steer away from modelling amplifiers, your Mustangs and those kind of stuff, just simply because you're going to spend so long fanning about with patches that you're not actually going to play the guitar. That's my experience of what students have and feedback I've had from students, that they spend so long trying to get a great sound. Now, if you are a tinkerer, it's a different ballgame. But for me personally, something simple, something with a couple of channels, and definitely reverb.
Yeah.
What about you, George? What do you think?
This, in short, this is a Vox Pathfinder down here, another lockdown purchase, and I never got on with it because you just plug it in and it's on or off. You've got your bass, treble. It's just bass and treble actually, no mids. And there's a separate channel as well for your gain, but it just doesn't do it for me because I like reverb. But it's a term practice amp. In an ideal world, we've got a 4x4 on the drive. We've got a convertible for when it's so. Most guitars just have an amp. And these Boss guitars that we use are fantastic for that, as you say, and you can go down that rabbit hole. Like the group have been discussing these Spark amps.
Yes, they have.
Even though they're the size of a postage stamp, they've got AI backing tracks and all sorts of gizmos. And, if you can already play, and it's not me being condescending, if you can already play, that's fine. But like James said, you want something that you can just plug in and practice to. Reverb gives it more ambience, I would say. It makes it less
softens
flat.
it a bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's not making it louder. So practice amp, if you just bought an electric guitar and you've just booked some lessons with Kirklees Guitar School, I'd recommend something just like your A or B 2-channel like that Vox down there, or the aforementioned Fender Frontman. Every practice room across the UK in high schools right now will have at least 3 knackered Fender Frontmans in.
Or Marshall MG15s.
MG15.
You want the MG15 because it's got reverb.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Orange Crush 20. That'd be a good option. Crush 20R. R stands for reverb. There's a theme here, folks. Yeah?
Yeah, it's just, you can have effects. Now, we spoke about guitar effects pedals the other week. That comes later.
Yeah, you don't want to get too wrapped up in that too early, because again, you spend all your time messing about with settings rather than actually playing guitar. Like, the thought process should be, I'm playing a song. What does that song sound like? What do I need? Like, I'm doing a lesson. I'm recording a lesson later today on Dreams, Fleetwood Mac.
Nice.
Now that's got some kind of like weird like envelope filter and stuff on the
lead line. See, when I've done that, I've always used my pinky on the tone part.
Yeah, and that's going to be an open point of discussion. But like, that is an ideal sort of thing to go, right, how can I achieve that sound with what I've got? But also, just play it.
Yeah,
half of the battle, the vast majority of all this is getting it in your fingers. Most of the tone comes from your fingers anyway.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
But we don't, minimalism's okay. You just, there's a common theme on this podcast. It's like, enjoy nice gear. It's okay to have nice gear, but don't spend your time playing guitar, not on
browsing the ads.
Anderton's website. Which,
Ryan,
we're all guilty of. Start of this podcast, that's Strats. I'm still thinking about that Strat, but it's you've just be sensible about it. And to be honest, I think as well, given the current market and how sort of globalization has, Chinese manufacturing and all that kind of stuff, you can't really make a bad purchase anymore.
I was about to say that when we were talking for David about the entry-level 8-year-old guitar. It'll come feature on a podcast. I've got a Fender Esquire Strat that I've had for years since new, and that was about 180 quid new, and that was like, it's a good guitar, because that was a good amount of money to spend. If you spend 180 quid guitar now on a guitar now, that's what arguably a £300-400 guitar was 10-15 years ago. Now, £100 you can get a really good guitar. When we were learning, when we were kids, if you spend 100 quid on a guitar, you might as well try and play on a doorstop.
My first guitar, I don't think you'd ever seen that actually, George. My first guitar was bought from Argos. It was an Encore Dreadnought-sized guitar that was... now, most acoustic guitars plug into amplifiers now, and it's almost like seen as it's an extra... It's £20 more to have one that plugs into an amp, so let's buy that because I might need it at some point. This was a big deal that it plugged into an amp, and it was significantly more expensive. And it was firewood. It was awful. And I've played beginner guitars now that were better than my second guitar.
Yeah.
I've actually known Stratocaster-shaped objects be made of foam inside. They're not actually wood. Far Eastern manufacturing has come if you buy a bad guitar nowadays that's brand new,
You've really had to try for it.
but you've had to try for it, and you've also got the sort of consumer rights and all that kind of stuff. Where if it is junk, you can send it back, and it's now easier than ever to do that. So yeah, I hope that again, shortest question, longest answer,
Ryan
but I
and
hope
David,
that was
hope that
helpful,
helps.
Ryan and David. Yes. So our next section is pick our brains. So
I've forgotten about this.
underrated guitar players. Who do you think's an underrated guitar player, George?
Okay, so they have knocking on for 1 million subscribers on YouTube, so they're known.
Okay.
He's called Josh Lee Turner. Now, if you punch in Sultans of Swing guitar cover on YouTube, he's the brown-haired dude with a sunburst telly. You might have seen it playing Sultans of Swing on his own.
Yes, I had no idea that was
There you
him.
go.
Yes, excellent.
So
guitarist.
he can get a bit weedy-beady, a bit folky. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not my cup of tea. He uploaded a video the other day doing Chopin number 29 in D minor, and it's blistering. But he can still do your YouTube covers of Starman, David Bowie, or Eleanor Rigby, and he's playing all the parts himself.
There's four of them. There's four friends that play together regularly. They all have their own sort of YouTube channels and YouTube followings, and they did a cover of The Chain about 6 months ago.
I think this will be Josh Turner.
Yeah.
They did one Stuck in the Middle with you the other year, 6 years ago.
Yeah, and it's really rootsy, and everything that I find those guys play is it's always exactly what the song called for. There's fancy twiddly bits, but there's never showboating. It's always just for the song, and I'd never have thought of him, George.
Yeah,
That's
he's
excellent.
Josh Turner. He's my other half. She thinks he's a bit naff, but he did an album in lockdown, and if I listen to any of those songs, I'm straight back to social distancing. That takes me back. But there's a song he does in a duo he's in called The Other Favourites. That's the duo. It's called The Other Favourites live in London, and I used to listen to this on repeat. And the opening song they do is one of their own called Angelina, and the solo in that is very George Harrison of the Beatles.
Okay.
And the chord progression is in. This is why I love the song so much, because he can do all the blues stuff and the Chopin and whatever. He's also a tremendous vocalist. He does all his harmonies. Mm-hmm. But the chord progression is F major to G minor 7 to D sharp 9, and then it resolves on an F major 7, but with an extra F in the bass, and it's.
And that sort of D7 sharp 9 it's a nod to old sort of folk and country
It is a bit
stuff.
folky. They
isn't
do
it? Yeah.
like Folsom Prison Blues, but yeah, Josh Turner guitar. Well, it's actually called Lee Turner because there's another Josh Turner in musical land. Baby, lock them doors and turn them. The country singer. I might have just embarrassed myself for no reason in front of you there.
I've no idea what you're talking.
Yeah, if you know your country music, Josh Turner, he's like
Okay.
Luke Combs, but 20
Oh,
years
right,
ago.
okay.
So yeah, copyright. He has to change his name to add his middle name. But yeah, have a look for Josh Lee Turner on YouTube and get lost in his stuff. And you've probably seen some of his stuff.
Yeah,
before.
a lot of viral videos and that kind of stuff.
But what about you?
50 years removed from Josh Turner.
Okay.
Mick Ronson. Mick Ronson played guitar for. He was the guitarist for the Spiders from Mars and early David Bowie stuff. All the sort of
Ziggy.
Yeah. And that's what he's well known for. But I did a little bit of reading because the guitar playing on the early Bowie records are all of the Bowie records really. I mean, Bowie was a bit like Ozzy Osbourne in that sense of he always had killer guitar players playing for him, and Mick Ronson was one of the earlier ones. I don't know if he was the first, but he was definitely one of the early ones. And off the back of, obviously he played with the Spiders and did all that, early Bowie stuff. He then went on to play for Van Morrison as a sideman. I didn't know, and then went to play for Bob Dylan as a sideman as well, and then had a long career afterwards producing hit records.
I love guitarists like this. You've never heard of them, but you have.
Yes.
You don't know the name, but you've heard their fingers moving.
And I think as well, like that whole kind of, because would you say that Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars was the start of that glam rock thing? Is it early 70s? Is it like 72
is
or
early.
something
It's
like
sort
that?
of Mark Bolan as well.
Let me know in the
rock.
comments. Is it early 70s? I'm not sure. But it's the start of that glam thing. But I feel like everybody kind of goes, oh, that was the 70s. It's a bit like Slade, isn't it? It's like they all... What's the guitarist called from Slade with the funny haircut? You know, with bowl haircut.
bowl
You know
haircut,
what I mean? Like, you'll kind of go, oh, that was a bad time for fashion. But actually, the music is incredible.
In 1971, the Faces released "Stay With Me," which is Ronnie Wood and Rod Stewart. Yeah, and it's a great ripping tuning opening.
How long were the Faces a thing? Because obviously Ronnie Wood went on to Stones.
Yeah, there was the Small Faces, which is Ichiku Park and all that sort of boy meets girl in the 60s. But then when Rod Stewart joined in the 70s, it sort of fizzled out. But then, like, you can watch Top of the Pops from back then on Channel 9, BBC 4, on a Friday night, and you have stuff like "Stay With Me," which is a almost version of Led Zeppelin level of rock pop. And then you've got David Bowie coming on to dress as a pirate with a parrot on his shoulder.
We had in my house we put sort of music videos on in the background instead of just mindless telly, and Rebel was on, and that's the pirate David Bowie thing in it, and both my kids were just like,
"What's that?
What is that?" But almost like, "What is that? That's really cool."
It's still, if you look back, it's really you'll know this, but I grew up listening to the Beatles. Like, I don't listen. I listen to anything from 1939 to 1999. That's my sort. 89 actually. I'm not a fan of the 90s, but yeah, we're getting away from your underrated guitarists.
But Mick Ronson, monster player. And again, one of those kind of just did exactly what was needed for the song, but some really inventive and good guitar playing. And he was also classically trained as well, which I think there's a lot of... there's quite a few notable guitarists who were classical musicians before, Randy Rhoads. Randy Rhoads was an excellent classical guitarist, but then arguably one of the most sort of revered heavy metal guitar
players.
There's
a video on YouTube of Ozzy Osbourne reacting to... So Randy Rhoads played guitar for Ozzy Osbourne for a bit before he died.
I think it was just the Blizzard of Oz album, so all Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, all that
There's a
stuff.
I can't remember what song it is, but Ozzy's reacting to they found this tape, and you might have seen it on YouTube, and Ozzy's reacting
Scroll
to
past
solo,
it, I haven't watched it.
And there aren't enough drugs in the world to make Ozzy look like he looked when he heard this lost Randy Rhoads solo. He's an incredible player. But the classically trained element means it's clever. It's not just mindless noodling.
Yeah.
It's calculated.
And it's all arpeggios and stuff, isn't it? Yeah, it's clever.
Take the shine off it. Yeah.
Right then, so what was last week's riff of the week,
Last
George?
week's riff of the week was Carry On Wayward Son by Kansas. Bit harder on a 12 string.
You did that. You did really well there. You played that better.
So what
than
have you
I
got for us
probably
this
could.
week then,
So we're going to have a
James?
look at Roadhouse Blues by The Doors. It's a really straightforward riff that uses mostly the open E string, but it's a nice little thing to sit on. And those of you that have been following what we've been doing with the loopers and things would be it'd be good for you to have a kick around with this, and then maybe E minor pentatonic over the top of it, something like that. So we're going to start with a group of 6 notes on the low E string, but we're gonna separate it. We're going for.
Okay. So we've got some hammer-ons from week one.
Hammer-ons from week 1, yeah. Now, we're going to start with a group of 6 notes on the low E string. Now, I want you to think about...
So what picking are you doing there?
So I'm doing alternate picking, and I'm sort of doing one by itself, then I'm doing a quick down and an up, another quick down and an up, and then I'm going to do one more by itself, getting you 6. Right. So it's a group of 1, 2 groups of 2,
1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Well, there was a buy one get one free one in there, but then I'm going to go to the A string. I'm going to pick the open A string, and then I'm going to hammer on with the index finger to the first fret of the A string, which is your blue note.
That's the clash, yeah.
And then in the same fell swoop, I'm going to hammer on with the second finger as well. So I'm actually
perfect fifth.
I'm hammering on and gaining 3 notes. I'm picking the string was. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah? I then go back to the E string and do exactly the same. And then I'm going to do exactly what I did on the A string. But I'm going to move down to the D string, and again, 0, 1, 2. And you just ping pong between those two.
Nice.
The Doors. Robbie Krieger again. He nearly made it as my underrated guitarist, but I thought Mick Ronson was a better choice for and it'd resonate more with the people that are listening to us today. But yeah, Robbie Krieger was an flamenco guitarist that sort of found his way into a psychedelic 60s rock band, which is very cool.
So yeah, have a listen to Roadhouse Blues this week if you're not playing it. That's the idea of Riff of the Week. We don't have to play it. Just have a listen.
Just enjoy it. Yeah. Was Roadhouse Blues on LA Woman? I think it was. Go and have a listen to LA Woman. It's an excellent album. Right then. So, what have we covered this week, George?
Everything this week. I think we've answered all the questions to the
I just keep looking for the time because I don't want us cameras to run out of. They're getting longer, these episodes. We need to be careful. It's too much fun.
We had our intro back to one-to-one lessons post half term. We've launched the podcast for everyone. It's going down well. Our technical focus this week was strumming patterns. So I gave you that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and down up, down up, down up, down up. We then looked at the different acoustic guitar profiles between a double O, a dreadnought, a jumbo, and a parlor. Memorise that. From there, we went to tone talk, a bit of gear, buying advice. So please comment below if you'd like to hear about or have some advice for whether it's picks, capos, tuners, whatever. We'll try and help you out as active musicians. From there, we had Pick Our Brains. We talked about underrated guitarists this week. And then we had our riff of the week, Roadhouse Blues.
By the Doors. Right then.
That's the one.
Shall we play them out then, George? We will see you next week. Thank you very much,
Thank you very much, everyone.